The untold truth about the samurai, debunking myths and exposing real history. The romanticized samurai, fact or fiction. For centuries, the image of the samurai has been deeply ingrained in global culture as noble warriors upholding a strict moral code known as Bushido. Countless films, novels, and video games have portrayed them as honorable swordsmen, fiercely loyal to their emperor and ready to sacrifice everything for duty. But how much of this narrative is rooted in historical fact and how much is a carefully constructed myth? Today, we will dive deep into the authentic history of the samurai, exploring their true relationship with the Japanese emperor, their iconic armor and combat techniques, and finally, dismantling the many myths and controversies that still shroud their legacy. The origins of the samurai, warriors, or political tools. The word samurai comes from the Japanese verb saburao, meaning to serve. Emerging around the 10th century during the Heian period, samurai were initially regional warriors serving powerful landowners known as daimyo. Contrary to popular belief, they were not protectors of the emperor, but rather enforcers for aristocratic families competing for power. The emperor, relegated to a largely symbolic role, had little direct control over these warriors. By the Kamakura period, 1185–1333, the samurai class evolved into Japan's dominant military force, yet their loyalty was not to the emperor, but to the shogun, a military dictator who effectively ruled Japan. Thus, the notion of samurai as imperial defenders is a significant distortion of historical reality. Samurai and the emperor. A complicated, distant relationship. While modern portrayals often depict samurai as devoted to the emperor, the historical relationship was far more complex and detached. By the time the samurai class solidified its power, the emperor had been marginalized, with real political and military authority resting in the hands of the shogunate. During the Tokugawa period, 1603–1868, the emperor was largely a ceremonial figurehead in Kyoto, while the samurai served the Tokugawa shoguns in Edo. This separation was so profound that most samurai never even saw the emperor, much less swore allegiance to him. Their primary loyalty was to their immediate lord and clan, not to the imperial institution. The romantic notion of unwavering samurai devotion to the emperor only gained prominence during the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century, when Japan's rulers sought to unify the nation by crafting a mythologized version of samurai loyalty centered around the emperor. The samurai attire more than just a suit of armor. The iconic image of the samurai clad in elaborate armor, wielding the deadly katana, is only partially accurate. Samurai armor, known as yoroi or oyoroi for mounted warriors and domaru for infantry, was meticulously crafted for both protection and mobility. Contrary to the sleek metallic designs popularized by modern media, traditional samurai armor incorporated lacquered leather, silk cords, and iron plates to offer flexibility during battle. Helmets, kabuto, often featured elaborate crests to display the wearer's clan and intimidate enemies. Yet in peacetime, samurai typically wore simple kimono-like garments called kamishimo and carried two swords, the katana and the shorter wakizashi, as symbols of their status rather than tools for daily combat. The visual extravagance of samurai attire, especially the myth of constant battle readiness, is an exaggeration born from later romanticizations. The art of war, samurai combat techniques, beyond the katana. While the katana is often glorified as the ultimate symbol of samurai prowess, it was not their primary weapon in most combat scenarios. Early samurai warfare centered around mounted archery, known as Kyuba no Michi, the way of the horse and bow. The yumi, an asymmetrical longbow, was a staple weapon used for both warfare and ceremonial purposes. samurai were trained in various martial disciplines collectively known as bujutsu, encompassing swordsmanship, kenjutsu, archery, kyujutsu, spearfighting, sojutsu, and unarmed combat, jujutsu. The katana only gained prominence as a primary weapon during the peaceful Edo period, when large-scale battles declined and personal duels or self-defense became more common. The overemphasis on swordsmanship in modern depictions disregards the samurai's versatile and pragmatic approach to warfare, which prioritized strategy and adaptability over romantic ideals of dueling. Bushido, a constructed code or ancient tradition. One of the most persistent myths about the samurai is the existence of Bushido as a codified ancient warrior code strictly adhered to by all samurai. In reality, the concept of Bushido, meaning the way of the warrior, was formalized long after the samurai had established their dominance. The earliest references to a warrior's code date to the 17th century, but the term Bushido only became widespread with the publication of Nitobe Inazo's book Bushido, The Soul of Japan, in 1899, well after the samurai class had been abolished. Prior to this, samurai behavior was guided more by clan customs and pragmatic considerations than by any universal ethical system. Acts of treachery, political assassination, and betrayal were common and often celebrated if they served clan interests. The romanticized view of Bushido as an unwavering moral compass is a retroactive construction reflecting modern Japan's efforts to create a cohesive national identity through idealized samurai virtues, controversial realities, samurai brutality, and political manipulation. The sanitized version of samurai history often omits their role as enforcers of feudal oppression and political violence. Samurai frequently engaged in acts of brutality, such as the widespread use of seppuku, ritual suicide, not as a noble gesture but often as a coerced punishment or political spectacle. Additionally, samurai enforced the rigid class hierarchy of feudal Japan, maintaining social order through violence and intimidation. The 47 Ronin incident, often hailed as a paragon of samurai loyalty, is emblematic of this contradiction. While portrayed as an act of honor, the Ronin's revenge killing was illegal, and they were ultimately ordered to commit seppuku by the shogunate, a stark example of how samurai ideals were manipulated by political authorities. These realities challenge the notion of samurai as purely noble figures, revealing a class deeply embedded in the political machinations and often violent enforcement of feudal rule. The decline and reinvention of the samurai myth. The samurai class officially came to an end during the Meiji Restoration, 1868, when Japan modernized its military and abolished feudal domains. However, far from fading into obscurity, the samurai were reinvented as national symbols. The Meiji government propagated an idealized vision of the samurai as paragons of loyalty and self-sacrifice, reinforcing nationalist sentiment and justifying imperial ambitions. This rebranding was instrumental during Japan's militarization in the early 20th century, when samurai imagery was used to rally the population. Ironically, the very class that had once resisted imperial centralization was now co-opted to support it. The global popularization of samurai through cinema, particularly the films of Akira Kurosawa, further distorted their historical reality, cementing the image of the honorable, katana-wielding warrior in the Western imagination. Samurai in pop culture. The persistence of myth. From Hollywood, blockbusters like The Last Samurai to countless anime and video games, the samurai continues to be depicted as an embodiment of honor, discipline, and martial prowess. Yet these portrayals often blend fact with fiction, perpetuating misconceptions about their role and ethics. The image of the lone ronin wandering the countryside seeking justice, or the samurai dueling to defend a lady's honor, are largely cinematic inventions. Real samurai were bound by practical concerns, land, politics and clan loyalty rather than abstract ideals. The continued fascination with the samurai reflects not their historical reality, but their mythologized role as symbols of timeless virtues in an age increasingly detached from traditional forms of warfare and social structure. Separating legend from reality, the true history of the samurai is far more complex, nuanced, and at times unsettling than the romanticized legends would have us believe. They were not simply noble warriors serving an emperor with unwavering devotion, but a politically motivated military class whose actions were dictated by pragmatism and power dynamics. Their attire was designed for practical warfare, not constant combat readiness, and their martial skills extended far beyond the katana. The myths of Bushido and samurai honor were largely constructed in retrospect, serving political agendas rather than historical accuracy. By confronting these realities, we gain not only a more honest understanding of the samurai, but also insight into how history can be manipulated to serve contemporary narratives. If you found this exploration of the real samurai as fascinating as we did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into history's most misunderstood figures. And tell us in the comments, what other historical myths would you like us to debunk next? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.